You are now being connected to the conference. Please stand by. This conference is being recorded.
Okay, if everybody could put their phones on mute. We were getting ready to get started. This webinar is being recorded so that we can put it up on our OEA YouTube site so that teachers and support professionals who weren't available to join us today can join in as you know, and learn the materials that we're going to be presenting today. So this is Alicia Priest, President of the Oklahoma Education Association, and we thank you for joining us for this webinar, Oklahoma Dreamers, What Educators Need to Know About DACA. The webinar is sponsored by our OEA Hispanic Caucus. We have several ethnic and minority caucuses that bring up issues that our members and the students that they serve need information on, need help with, want to learn more about. And they represent our ethnic and minorities in that manner. And so this is one of those things that came about, thinking that maybe our educators need to know a little bit more about DACA and Dreamers with all the changes that are going in right now. So please, again, put your phones on mute. And then as we go through the webinar, there are a couple of ways that you can ask questions. If you're looking on the webinar screen, you can see that there's a place to raise your hand. And on our screen, we see that your name is highlighted. We will have lots of people on here, and so I'll keep trying to scroll through and see if anyone's hand is raised, and then we can ask questions that way. We'd really like to wait until the end of the webinar to have questions. Also, you can type in the participant feedback. So there's a Q&A at the bottom, and you can type your message there, and then you can select your chat recipient and send it to the different people that are on the list, or just yours may just say broadcast to all. So we can answer questions that way. I see that there's something on there that says the toll-free number, the call-in number is not working. Have you gotten it to work? Because that's how we've done this. Did anybody use the 800 number to call in? Come off mute and let me know if you're listening through the toll-free number.
I'm listening to
I called in using that. Kelly Roberts, Tulsa.
Okay. So we have a few people that have called in using the toll-free number. So if you're having trouble with the toll-free number, then give it another try. And give me just a second while I type that message in, because it came through the participant question area that they typed. Okay, so participating in our webinar are Crystal Medina. Crystal is a science teacher in Tulsa Public Schools, and she is one of the leaders of our OEA Hispanic Caucus. Crystal, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hello.
We also have Gloria Torres. She is a school board member for Oklahoma City Public Schools. She is a former teacher and principal and a community activist. So welcome, Gloria Torres.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Good to be here with everyone.
And coming soon, only slightly delayed. Senator Michael Brooks will be here. He is the newly elected senator in District 44. He's a lawyer by trade and works with immigration law. So he'll be here in a bit. He's just running a bit late. And you know, as educators, we are flexible when things happen. So we may have to flip-flop some of our slides and go with the flow, but we are quite capable of doing that and following along. So I want to thank everyone for calling in, and we especially want to thank those who are partnering with us in getting us this good information. All right. Let's move on, and Crystal is going to talk to us a little bit about what is DACA. Crystal?
All right. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this evening, and to those that will be tuning in later. First and foremost, my name is Crystal Medina, and I'm a teacher at Webster Middle School in West Tulsa. I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade general science, and I'm also a member of the Oklahoma Education Association's Hispanic Caucus. And we at OEA thought it was important to provide a little bit more information on immigration and DACA, and so let's get started. All right, if we can go ahead and change the slide. All right, thank you. So the first question many individuals have is, what is DACA? So as you can see on your screen, there's a formal definition of it. But DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is an American immigration policy available to children brought here, known as Dreamers, upon meeting certain guidelines. The children that were brought here may request consideration of deferred action for a period of 2 years, which Senator and Immigration Attorney Michael Brooks will speak on a little later. Switch the slide, please. All right, the second question is, what is a Dreamer? Simply put, a Dreamer is a child who was brought to the U.S. that qualifies for deferred action based on a set criteria. 71% of the potential beneficiaries are from Mexico, 4% are from North and Central America, 6% are from Asia, and 9% are from other parts of the world. The term Dreamer is given to those individuals who meet or will meet the general requirements of the Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors, aka DREAM. And then next slide, thank you. So what does DACA do? First, it allows Dreamers to obtain Social Security numbers. In return, this allows Dreamers to obtain gainful employment, pay taxes, obtain health insurance, driver's license, and care for themselves as well as their families. In 2013, preliminary findings from the National Undocumented Research Project conducted by the American Immigration Council found that since receiving DACA, young adult immigrants had become more integrated into the nation's economic institutions. 94% that were surveyed responded they would apply for citizenship if ever eligible. 61% obtained new employment, and over 50% opened their first bank account, and 38% obtained their first credit card. Last but not least, Last but not least, DACA gives immigrant youth access to a high-quality education, broad range of opportunities that helps to lead to that all-American dream. We all benefit from that. Am I still there?
Yes, we dropped you for a minute.
Sorry, my husband just drove up and the Bluetooth switched to the car, so I do apologize. I will start back. What was the last thing we heard?
What DACA is giving for our immigrant youth.
Okay, thank you. I do apologize again. DACA gives our immigrant youth access to a high-quality education, broad range of opportunities that helps lead to that all-American dream. We all benefit from DACA. Our communities benefit from increased spending on things that help to support and sustain our local economies at the same time by having a larger skilled workforce. DACA is a gateway to a lifestyle of safety and happiness.
And you know, Crystal, most of the DACA recipients came over when they were 3 years old.
That is correct.
That's the usual age for those for our American dreamers. So so they came over quite young. They don't know anything other than what they've lived in America.
I agree, because my husband specifically, it's kind of personal to me, but my husband specifically came here when he was 2. He didn't choose to come here when he was 2. He's now a citizen. He was able to obtain his actual American citizenship. But so, yeah, if he was to go back to Mexico, he wouldn't know where to go. He wouldn't know his family. So, yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. All right. So tell us about who benefits.
Who benefits is everyone, essentially. Those that came here as a child, they benefit by being able to maintain their own life. They get to have a job. They get to pay taxes. They can have a car. They can support their families. Then our communities as well, because the more taxpayers that we have, then the more individuals we have earning money that then puts that money back into our economy. So I think everyone benefits, as well as just having a very diverse population. We all learn from that.
You're right. You're right. When we can look at things from different points of view and integrate different ideologies and cultures into what we're doing in the classroom, we all benefit. And when we have productive citizens, we all are beneficiaries. So let's talk with Oklahoma City Public School Board member Gloria Torres, and she's going to talk to us about what we can do with policymakers, how they can help.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Again, I am with Oklahoma City Public Schools. I serve as the vice chair. I also serve on the government relations and policy committees. So we really look at what are the policies that are governing our district and impacting students and teachers. And one of the primary things that we need to make sure that we do is we as a district, let's go ahead and go to that first slide. We as a district are really that front line for many of the families that are being impacted by this, by DACA. Our students, we tell our students to dream and to prepare for their futures. And we're supporting them all through elementary and all through high school and encouraging them. And so we develop this trust, this relationship with them, and they come to us for guidance and with that level of trust. And us being, normally it's the teachers, but it's as an institution, that's where we're at. So it's important that we be at the front of what's going on with this. As you know, board members are laymen. Most board members are not professional educators. Although I do bring an education background, that's not the standard. For many board members, they are not related to education in any way. So it's important that those of us who are informed about this situation, about these issues, take the time to inform our board members or our other policy makers, whether they be your city council, your senators, your representatives, that we take whatever information we have available and share it with them. We have a number of resources. I think we can go to the next one. We have a number of resource groups in our communities that can provide more specific information about individual resources for individual families of specific situations. So we know that, for example, here in Oklahoma we have DACA OK, and they are a group of young people who are either experiencing this, they are dreamers themselves, or they are family and loved ones of dreamers. And so what are some of the things that happen to them? What are some of their struggles? Many of us are not going to understand what those are because we don't experience that. We don't have to live that. So we have to depend on these young people to share those experiences with us. That's where the importance of coming into the community comes in. Be a part of the community. Have those opportunities for them to learn from you what are their rights, what are their protections, what are their resources. Because the trust is already established between many families and the schools, this is a great opportunity to further strengthen that trust when they see that you're coming to them with supports for them. You're here to encourage them, to tell them you're going to back them up. We're here to support our children. So what is it that we can do? We can invite some of these community organizations to come in and share those resources. They come very well prepared. There's a nationwide organization that is supporting students, and young people and families, letting them know what the next steps are. Who are some reputable organizations that they can go to for support? When do you need an attorney? Well, what do you not need an attorney for? What type of question do you have to answer? What do you not have to answer? So there's all sorts of outside of the school questions that these families have. Now, inside the school, what do we need to do? Inside the school, inside different institutions, we need to ensure that our policies reflect what our stance is. As a school, as an educational institution, our stance is we are here to provide a high-quality education in a safe and secure learning environment for all students. As a child should not be afraid to come to school and wonder if their parent is going to be taken away, or a parent should not be concerned with, if I take my child here, are they going to take him, are they going to give him over to immigration? Unfortunately, here in Oklahoma City, we have had, I've received a number of calls from schools where there have been parents taking their children to school, and 2 blocks away from the school, immigration officer has pulled over the parent and asked for their papers, their identification, and have found that they don't have it. So they have removed a parent in front of a child while they were not breaking the law, while they were driving them to school. So a child gets to school, and the next day, the family then tells the school, Dad was taken away 2 blocks away from the school. We can't take our child back to school now. The fear that impacts that family transfers over to all of the other families who may be in similar situations. So how can we as a school provide that support for them, that assurance to them that says, this is a safe place. We need you in school. We need you to continue your learning. We try to provide as much normalcy as possible, but how can we assure them of that? One thing is to ensure that your discrimination policies or non-discrimination policies very clearly outline that we do not discriminate against any student, any family member, any staff member based on national origin or immigration status. As long as we are following the law, it is not our job to identify who has what type of status when they come to our schoolhouse. Plyler versus Doe is the federal law that says every child is entitled to a free public education regardless of immigration status. So our school districts across the nation are set up to request information from parents only to identify who the child is, and their maybe where they were born is fine, but we do not ever request information that requests immigration status. If there is ever a request from an immigration official to come into the school, the policy is any law enforcement official must come with the proper documentation to request to see any student. That means they have to properly serve a search warrant or a subpoena before they are allowed any access to any student. And that is something that we have to make clear to our families and to our staff, and that has to be stated immediately from the district. I can say, because the school districts that I'm most familiar with, both Tulsa and Oklahoma City, were very prompt in making very bold and open statements that says, we protect our children. We are going to ensure that they know that this is a safe environment for them, and we're here for not just our children, but for our families and for our communities. And so whatever we need to do to ensure that that learning continues. Recently we had, and as you know, it continues to be a significant amount of fear in many of our populations, many of our communities. And so what we found is we need to provide, as a district, those supports to our children, to our students, to our families. Those supports meant providing counseling for trauma and for crisis. That's what these families are experiencing. They're experiencing trauma. They're experiencing a crisis, an oppressive type of crisis, in that this is an ongoing thing. They never know if they're going to come to school, and that's the last time that they see their parent. Because it unfortunately has happened to children in their class. It has happened this year. It has happened either this week. It has happened to people that they know. It has happened to people that they're related to. So this is that we know, Education 101 is we have to bring down that affective filter in order for any student to be able to learn. When that affective filter is such that I'm afraid of what's going to happen if I step into the schoolhouse, we're defeating our own purpose. So ensuring that we have policies that make it very clear that we do support all students. We will not discriminate based on immigration status, and we will protect them as much as is needed. And we will provide those resources that are needed as well as they are identified. And that's something that has to be communicated from the top all the way through. We cannot have people who say, well, I don't agree, or whatever this is. The fact of the matter is, what we have all signed up to do is to ensure that every single child that walks in our classroom door is provided a high-quality education in a safe and secure learning environment. That's what each person needs to do, and that's what our policies need to reflect.
And I know that Oklahoma City Public Schools, after the announcement was made that the DACA status and the Dreamer things were going away, Oklahoma City Public Schools put on all their marquees, "We welcome Dreamers," just to make sure that that the students felt welcome and that they had a safe place to go, and that the education is an important piece of their community, and they needed to continue along that line. And you put out a pretty bold statement.
We did, and if anybody would like to reference it, it is at the Oklahoma City Public Schools website, which is www.okcps.org. Under About OKCPS, you'll find the non-discrimination statement. And that non-discrimination statement, we've revised it a couple of times just to ensure that it properly reflects. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your preferences are, what your beliefs are, what your nationality is, what your immigration status is. It does not matter. We will not discriminate against any student or employee. DACA recipients are working in our districts. DACA recipients are working all over the nation, and this non-discrimination statement applies not just to our students but also to our staff, because they are part of our community as well.
Absolutely. So
there's some questions about how DACA, and we may want to go to that slide.
Next slide.
As I said, our school board members are all laymen, and so it's important to inform those who may not be knowledgeable of what needs to happen and who's being impacted and how they're being impacted. And so if you are one that has received this information and you can pass it on, even if you can't repeat everything that goes on, we can direct them to this webinar so that they can become more informed. A couple of other rules with working in a school district, and these are rules for employment, but they also apply to students. So DACA recipients received a temporary permit. It was a 2-year permit, and Senator Brooks will elaborate a little bit more on this, but at the expiration of it, if you are either in school or as an employee of a school district or any other institution, once that expires, then you are if you are the employer, then you have every right to let that person go. However, what you don't need to be doing is asking about their individual status. There is, when you start the process, you have to confirm that everything is in line, just like your teaching certificates and everything else. This is part of it. You cannot terminate them prior to the expiration of anything based on what you suspect, but rather at the termination or the expiration of their work permits. So those are all, they have, part of DACA was to be able to receive access to getting your driver's license, to getting a Social Security number, to getting an I-10 number, if that's what you were going to use to be able to work. Your Social Security number doesn't have an expiration date, so therefore there would be no reason to use that. Your driver's license is valid until the date it expires, which is, what, 4 years now? So that's what they're eligible for now, is up to those 4 years. Your work permit has an expiration date, and so you're eligible to work up until that point still.
Right, and so when Senator Brooks gets here and talks about pieces of the legislation, one of the things that the OEA and NEA directors did, the NEA director, Patty Ferguson Palmer, lobbied on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. for our lawmakers to create a clean Dreamer DACA Act, meaning not tied to any other legislation that allows for a pathway for our Dreamers to work, to go to school, to feel safe in the country that they've grown up in. And then some of the questions that that students ask. You know, our students are fearful. They came back after that. They didn't understand.
They didn't know, can I still come to school? Are they going to come get me now? Does my world end immediately? And for many of them, they felt like it did. But that's where what students need is to have somebody that they can go ask questions to, that they can feel safe with. If you'll notice the little butterfly up at the top, what many of our schools did through OKC, through DACA OK, they've distributed the butterflies to be able to identify where is a safe place that I can ask questions, that I can get direction from. And so many of our counselors, our principals, our classroom teachers have a butterfly posted in their window just so that students know this is I am one of the safe places that has information, and I can help answer your questions for you.
And we have, I think that's a good segue to go into, you know, what are some of the current, we talked a little bit, just touched briefly on NEA directors lobbying about a new clean DACA bill just within the last 2 weeks in Washington, D.C. And we have Senator Brooks here, our newest senator from Senate District 44. And he is going to talk about some legislative decisions that are affecting students and their families. Senator?
Yes. So absolutely. And so as Alicia said, my name is Michael Brooks. And so at the same time that I am the newest senator, I'm also an immigration lawyer who's been practicing for about 22 years. And so what's happened is that really the way that these young people got the name Dreamers is because there's been a law or a bill that's been kicking around Congress probably for the past 15 years called the DREAM Act. And so really it was kind of a comprehensive way to be able to deal with kids that were brought here to the United States whenever they were young, and an opportunity for them to earn their permanent residence either by going to college or serving in the armed forces. And so what happened is that it was the politics of it was that there was always strong bipartisan support supposedly for something like this to be able to help the kids, but unfortunately it never made it to the floor and never made it for a vote. And so as a result, in 2012, President Obama, after the last kind of major immigration reform failed in Congress, President Obama decided to take it upon himself and try and do something to be able to help these kids. And so what he did is he announced through executive order that he was going to start a program called DACA, Deferred Action for Child Arrivals. And so really what it was that if you could prove 5 things, then you could get a work permit for 2 years, and those work permits would be renewable. And so what would happen is with a work permit, then these kids could go ahead and also be able, with their work permit, they could get a Social Security card. And with those 2 documents, one of the other significant things is that they could get a state ID or a driver's license. And so what happened is that DACA really did well for about 6 years, or did well until actually until the election. And so after the election, President Trump had run on a position that day one that he was going to take DACA away, and that didn't happen. But however, what did happen is that on September 5th, he announced that he was going to cancel the DACA program, and so he had situated it to where it was going to sunset. And so what happened is that he announced that anybody whose work authorizations were going to expire in the next 6 months after September 5th, and so from September 5th to March 5th, that they could apply for renewals, and they could qualify for a renewal for a work card for another 2 years. But President Trump also set a 1-month deadline to be able to apply for those renewals. And so as a result, between September 5th and October 5th of this year, there was a big push to file renewals for all those young people whose work cards were expiring on March 5th or before. For anybody after March 5th. So the difference is, for someone whose card expires on March 5th, if they filed an extension, it's conceivable that they may continue to qualify for work authorization until March 5th of 2019. But for that person whose card unfortunately expires after March 5th, so even if it's March 6th of 2018, that person under the current guidance would not be able to apply for an extension. So those cards expire on the date that they have. They're unable to file for an extension. In addition, young people who, for one reason or another, hadn't previously filed an application for DACA, there's no opportunity now to be able to file for people who would be receiving work authorization for the first time. And so right now we're just kind of in limbo. And so there's that DREAM Act, that proposal, that bill that had kicked around for so long, it is still up in Congress and still being considered. And then also a lot of you may have noticed that Senator James Lankford has gotten together with another Senator Tilliford, I think is his name, and they've come up with something called the Succeed Act. And so the interesting thing is that these two measures, these 2 bills, kind of mirror each other, that there very little difference between the 2 of them. I think the path toward permanent residence for somebody under the DREAM Act would take about 13 years, and under the Succeed Act it would take about 15 years. But it's something with benchmarks where people would qualify for work authorization as they move forward until they could earn their permanent residence. At this point, along with lots of other policies, I think the current administration is fairly unpredictable and fairly inconsistent. And so as an immigration attorney, it's been difficult to be able to advise people because the policies can change from day to day. And so I saw on the news last week where Senator Lankford had announced publicly that he anticipated that there was going to be some sort of extension of DACA past March 5th, but I haven't seen anything since then. And so right now there's not a lot of assurance as to what's going to happen or what's going on.
So we had a question about how many education employees are affected with DACA, and we know that across the United States there are about 20,000 educators.
Yes.
That could be, administrators, teachers, school support professionals. So about how many are there, how many Dreamers DACA recipients are there as a whole?
I think as a whole, I want to say that there's somewhere between, I want to say it's upwards of close to, I think 800,000 nationwide. In Oklahoma, I think we have probably maybe 15 or 20,000, something like that, I think are the numbers. And
7,900.
7,900? Okay.
That's what it was for Oklahoma.
Okay. And so yeah. And so at this point, I employ 2 kids that have DACA in my office. And so one of the things that as far as for employees, for people who have DACA that are working, that are concerned about what's going to happen when their cards expire. My perspective is that if someone is here and they have work authorization and they're working, typically the time that they verify immigration eligibility to work is when someone's hired with the I-9. And so once you've done that HR work and you've followed those I-9 requirements, there's typically very little oversight or monitoring on the calendar of when someone's work authorization expires. And so if I could advise people who are working right now, I would advise them to try and find a job that they feel confident that they want to maintain, and then satisfy those I-9 requirements while their work authorizations are still valid, and keep your head down and keep on working until your employer asks you for something else. And so if DACA cards do actually start expiring in March of next year. Does that make sense? Okay. And so, yeah.
We talked a little bit about the rules for employment already and questions that students may be asking. So let's move on to Crystal. And what can you do as a teacher or an education support professional?
All right. So the first thing, next slide, thank you. The first thing any adult that works with children is to create a safe and welcoming community. We can achieve this by being present. We need to be in the halls. We need to be out before school, after school if possible. We need to be listening to their conversations to see if we can spot anything that raises a red flag. We need to be there for our kiddos as well, not just as a teacher, but as a confidant, as a friend, as someone that they can trust. We have an amazing platform to be there for them, and we need to use it. We need to not just say that we're there for them, but we need to show them. We need to show in action with words, with actual attainable results. We need to show them that we're there for them. Secondly, we need to become familiar. Next slide, please.
I think we also need to talk about
Thank you. All right. Secondly, we need to become familiar with the mental health issues facing youth in immigrant communities. As we all know, mental health issues can be expressed in many ways, such as depression, lashing out, change in diet, change in general behavior. We will have links at the end of this webinar where you can learn a little bit more about the mental health that surrounds immigrant communities. Third, if you have the platform within your classroom, such as an advisory, study hall, or homeroom, you can open the dialogue to further educate your students and to be able to have those conversations that are extremely important. If you don't have these platforms, you can still address immigration issues. We can integrate immigration work within our curriculum. Doing so creates a culture which our students' histories, values, beliefs, and perspectives are available for others to learn from. Students can be better prepared for citizenship in a diverse society. At the same time, we as educators and education support professionals need to be prepared for acts of racism and hate. With the change in our administration in our country, as a nation, we saw an increase in incidents of hate, bullying, and biases. We as educators, regardless of our personal political beliefs, need to address all forms of hate before a larger or a bigger crisis happens. We as the adults need to set the tone within the building and be proactive before we have to be reactive. Ways in which all adults in the building can achieve this are included in this slide. First and foremost, we need to put the safety of our students, our teachers, and their families first. If a child in our building is a target of hate or racism, we need to take action immediately. We need to denounce that action. Next, we need to investigate and gather as much information as possible. Dreamers, children who were brought here by their parents, need to see that. They need to see that regardless of their citizenship status, we are willing to go to bat for them to ensure that they are safe and that they're comfortable. This is their home just as it is our home. We need to also ensure that our students learn that acts of hate like this are unacceptable, and we need to work to heal all affected parties.
All right, thank you, Crystal. Those are some really thoughtful ways that we can deal with this, with racism and hate, because schools should be no place for that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what can you do through the OEA. What is the OEA offering? Our OEA governing documents are very clear. Our preamble to the Oklahoma Education Association Constitution states that we are to promote and protect human and civil rights and advance the cause of education, and that's for all students. Also, our mission, vision, and core values are clear on this issue. Our vision is a great public school for every student, and our mission is to advocate for education professionals and to unite our members and the people of Oklahoma to fulfill the promise of public education and to prepare every student to succeed in a diverse and interdependent world. In addition, our core values, which are our guiding principles that define our work and our mission, are that we have equal opportunity. Public education is the gateway to opportunity. We believe in a just society, that education is vital to building dignity and respect and equality of every individual, among other things. And through collective action, we make these things happen. So we have a blog spot where you can go and get sources related to this webinar. That is at okea.org/OEA-blog. And you see that there. So it'll be accessed on the OEA website, okea.org. Okay? Among other things, you can take the NEA Pledge, the National Education Association, which is our national organization, to pledge to help students reach their full potential regardless of immigration status. And that's at educationvotes.nea.org/DACA, D-A-C-A. You need to stay informed. Connect with organizations, real news, not fake news. When you're on the Facebooks, don't just forward articles. Make sure that those articles come from reputable sources. That's really important as educators, that we're promoting actual, factual information on our Facebook pages and in our classrooms. Check out things at the National Immigration Law Center. Get on their email list. Make sure you are on the OEA legislative update and getting those. We want you to visit NEA initiative and partner websites like neaedjustice.org. United We Dream is another fantastic group that we partner with on a national level. You can sponsor a club celebrating diversity at your own school, and we have ways to help you do that. Another way is to join one of our several OEA ethnic and minority caucuses, like the OEA Hispanic Caucus that is promoting this webinar today. Most importantly, we need to stand united, because no matter what happens, we will continue fighting for and supporting our immigrant students and the communities that we work in. Schools, we know, should be a safe place. They should be a safe place no matter where a student comes from, how much money their parents make, what kind of clothing they are wearing on any given day, their race, religion, cultural background. None of that matters to us. What matters is we create a safe space in our schools for our children to learn and grow. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and answer some questions that have popped up on the screen. One of them is, can DACA holders apply for citizenship and go through the path other immigrants take, path to citizenship? So, Senator?
Yes. Okay. Well, all right. And so DACA, unfortunately, that's the difference between DACA and the DREAM Act and the Succeed Act that are being proposed right now. DACA doesn't have a path toward permanent residence or citizenship. And so typically the ways that people can get their permanent residence most often are either applications through immediate family members or sometimes applications through employment. And so a lot of these young kids that have been here in the United States since they were little, if they have an immediate family member that can apply for their permanent residence. And so lots of times you'll have kids who are young people who have DACA and they hit their 20s and they fall in love, they marry an American citizen. Well, yes, then at that point there's nothing preventing them from being able to apply and get their permanent residence through that U.S. citizen spouse. However, if you have someone who's here and they have DACA, or if they're undocumented, there's not, for most people, there's not someone who can petition for them, and so there's not necessarily a path toward permanent residence right now. Sometimes I think there's a misperception that people who are undocumented here in the United States, it's just a conscious choice, or it's because they procrastinated and just haven't filed the right paperwork. That is not correct. For the vast majority of people in the United States that are undocumented, there's not a path toward legal permanent residence, and so they're kind of caught in a catch-22 where they're desperate to try and get their permanent residence, but there's not a path to be able to get there right now.
Okay, and we were just having a question and answer typing discussion about the court case that said all children, regardless of immigrant status, can have an education, and that was Plyler versus Doe.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's the Supreme Court case, Plyler versus Doe, which establishes the position that every kid has the right to an education K through 12, regardless of immigration status.
Okay, and one of the things that we didn't quite hit on was higher education.
Yes, ma'am. Well, and so my full disclosure, my wife is a recruiter for OU, and so she recruits a lot on the south side of Oklahoma City for OU, and so as a result, she's encountered lots of DACA kids and kids that are even without DACA that are undocumented. And so, fortunately, in the state of Oklahoma, years ago, there was a bill that was passed that defines what an Oklahoma resident is for purposes of in-state tuition. And so I think the definition is if a young person attends the last 2 years of high school here and they graduate from an Oklahoma high school, then they're an Oklahoma resident, which means they qualify for in-state tuition. And so even if a young person has DACA right now, then there shouldn't be anything holding them back from applying to either a public or a private university in the state of Oklahoma. And even moving forward, if DACA is to expire and there's nothing to replace it, after March, those young people who attended the last 2 years of high school here and graduated from an Oklahoma high school should still be able to attend college here in Oklahoma. One of the things that makes it more difficult is most of the time these young people, including kids with DACA, even though they have Social Security numbers, they can't qualify for financial aid. And so that includes Oklahoma Promise. They can't qualify for Oklahoma Promise. They can't qualify for federal financial aid, most student loans. And so they can qualify typically for some private scholarships. But a lot of these young people, the way that they make it work, because they have DACA, they're authorized to work, and so they work on-campus jobs and then extra jobs when they're not at school to be able to save enough money to be able to pay tuition.
Okay. So I don't see any hands up on the screen, nor any other questions being typed in. So we're going to go to the last slide, and I would like to thank you all. We just had a question. Is there a time when a K-12 student can apply for DACA? Can they do that in high school? When? Okay.
Yes. And so right now, because President Trump kind of pulled DACA on September 5th, no one can submit a new application for DACA. But the way that it used to be is that a kid couldn't apply for DACA until they turned 15 years of age. And so you had kids that maybe satisfied the 5 requirements of what President Obama had previously set to be able to qualify, but there was a restriction that you couldn't apply for this work authorization until you're 15. And so there are going to be some kids, maybe 15 years old now and younger, that satisfied all the requirements, but because President Trump took the program away before they had a chance to apply, unfortunately they're not going to be able to apply unless something else changes.
Which is why we really need to push and contact our legislators to pass a clean DACA bill.
Okay.
All right, so I want to thank our fantastic panelists today, Crystal Medina from Tulsa Public Schools, leader in our education, our Hispanic caucus, Senator Brooks, and Gloria Torres. Thank you guys so much for being here. Would you like to give any final statements before we go?
Well, just to remind everybody, everybody working with students, we need to continue to encourage them because we never know which doors are going to open. And we want our students to always be prepared and to be willing to take that next step to continue their education. We don't know what the past will lead. We don't know which doors will be opened, but we want all of our students to always be prepared. So encourage them to continue even if they feel like maybe there's no hope. There is hope.
Right, and I think that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to piggyback on you, but I mean, as far as, because the chances a lot of these kids still have to be able to pursue higher ed and everything else, because I know sometimes when they become a junior or senior in high school, if they don't see much of a future because of their immigration status, then all of a sudden they don't really know what the point is of trying to continue. And so to be able to say, no, DACA would have helped, but DACA wasn't the thing that made it possible for you to go to college. You can still go to college and you can still qualify for in-state tuition, I think is a very, very important message. Over the next several months, I think kids probably from middle school probably on, and maybe people are going to, as we get closer to the time when these cards start to expire, I think you're going to see more and more anxious kids, more and more nervous kids, because immigration is going to become a weight on them like it used to be, where I think they're going to be scared for themselves, but not so much scared. A lot of these DREAM Act kids, they talk about not necessarily being worried about themselves, but worried about coming home and finding out that their parents have been picked up by immigration. This is a real anxiety that I think that before it maybe wasn't as openly discussed, that a lot of these kids go through a lot of stress every day when they go to school, because they don't know if when they come home their parents are going to be there. And so to be able to acknowledge that and let kids know it's okay to be worried about it and to have someone to talk about it, I think is an important thing moving forward as well.
All right. Thank you all for joining in on our webinar. We appreciate you participating virtually with us, and look forward to doing more to help our students, because that's what we're here for. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.